Project Q's price just leaked. How bad is it? This might be one of the weirdest special edition PS5s ever. And here are the PS Plus Essential Games of July. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is the midweek news update here on the channel. I'm still getting everything set up down here, but I finally got some time to play Final Fantasy 16. I'm not deep enough to really give my opinions on it yet, but as someone who's never really been a huge JRPG guy, I'm loving the action-focused take on the genre, and overall, I'm just like totally shocked by how much blood there is in this game. So I'll give you more of an update as I get deeper into it, but I'm splitting my time between that and Diablo 4, which is awesome on PS5. So it's a really good time to be a guy who likes games with a ton of blood and violence and stuff like that. All right, so the first news I have to talk about today is from this whole FTC hearing that Microsoft is doing right now, where they're basically trying to convince the FTC that they're not a monopoly if they buy Activision or something like that. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. I just know that this is super important for Microsoft's whole purchase of Activision. But through this entire thing, Jim Ryan actually had to come testify, and we got some nice little tidbits of news from that. But this news is actually coming directly from Microsoft. So one of their lawyers, I guess, was talking about Sony and saying, oh, Sony's not really doing all that bad right now. If we buy Activision, it's going to be totally fine for them. They will completely survive out on their own. And one of the examples he gave is that they have their Project Q handheld coming out later this year. And he said specifically it's going to be under $300. Now, initially when this news came out, there was a little bit of Twitter drama because of course there was. People were sitting there like, oh man, if this thing's $300, it is dead on arrival. But I totally agree with that. By the way, if this thing comes out and it's $299.99, it is definitely going to be a hard sell for most people, because all you really have to do is pay $100 more for a Steam Deck, and it can do literally everything that this thing can do, minus the DualSense features. But like, if you're on a handheld, I don't think those DualSense features are going to be enough to convince people to spend $300 on a device that you can't natively play games on, right? So like, getting a Steam Deck, at the very least, you can stream games, like remote play them from your PlayStation 5. But if you want to play some Steam games as well, the capability is there. And that's really the biggest issue that came along with the G Cloud as well. That thing was even more expensive at $350, and it had the ability to emulate games, not super well, but it could still emulate older games, which was a big plus, and people still didn't really turn up to buy that thing. But the key piece of news here that everyone's kind of ignoring or missing is that the actual statement said this thing's going to be under $300. It's not going to cost $300, it's going to be under $300. Now, of course, that could be marketing speak. Under $300 could theoretically mean $299.99. That's still technically under $300. Like everything on the market, you never pay $500 for a PlayStation 5. You pay $499.99. You know what I'm saying? But this is Microsoft giving this information, so I would guess they know that it's going to be well under $300, or at the very least like $50 to $100 less. Because at $200, I think this thing is at the perfect price point for people to kind of consider it. And then if they can get these things in the Best Buy or something, so people can actually hold them and see how the remote play actually works, I think that's how you start convincing people that this thing is worth buying. That's the biggest problem I think they've run into with the PSVR 2. Like, the tech that's there is incredible. It's the best VR headset I've personally ever used. I really loved playing through Resident Evil Village on it, but if I explain that to people, they're kind of sitting there like, okay, I can't really even conceptualize what VR is, so hell no am I gonna go spend $550 on it. So if they had the ability to demo this thing in like Best Buy or something like that and really show people how it works, I think that's when word of mouth would really take off. This is a weird and interesting situation for me specifically because, as you guys know, I have another channel called Deck Ready, which is all about handheld PCs. And right now, the two I'm messing around with the most are the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck. And you know, I still really like the Steam Deck. The ROG Ally definitely is more powerful, and it does a little bit better with games at 60 FPS if you're playing at 720p. But the amount of games that actually play at 60 FPS, the list is very short. So in my opinion, at least, the Steam Deck is a little bit better of a device. But I don't know, I could never really just see myself inserting this Project Q into my handheld like library. I don't really know what to call it, my handheld collection. Like, I'm definitely gonna pick one up and give it a fair review. It's just not something that I'm sitting here like, wow, I really need the ability to stream games from my PlayStation 5 to a brand new device. And the crazy thing is, Sony's obviously got the technology here to put the DualSense features inside inside a handheld, right? They're literally doing it with the Project Q. So I hope that when they see people kind of saying, oh, I don't want to pick this thing up because there are better options available. So I hope what happens is that when they see people saying, oh, there are just so many better options for around the same price as this thing that allow me to play games natively on it, I'm gonna go with that. They say, hey, we're already halfway there with this Project Q. Let's scrap this whole thing, build it out as a new handheld that's like the PSP 3 or Vita 2, and start putting PS4 and PS5 games that are just pared down onto it. So you can play the console games on the go, because I think that's a huge reason why the Switch was able to take off as well as it did. It wasn't like a supplementary device like you would have the 3DS and the Wii U before, where you would get TV games on the Wii U and you would get handheld games on the 3DS. The Nintendo Switch, while it does have a lot of handheld games that they're upscaling and selling for 60 bucks, not a practice I'm a huge fan of. It does have a lot of actual AAA games, like the biggest game of this year, probably Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That is a AAA open world action RPG that you can take on the go, but then dock and have a great experience on the TV. I think there's real utility there, and the whole point is that you can play these games on both devices. Like if Sony was able to have this handheld that could not only play PS5 games, but then they bolstered out their release schedule with handheld style games that also came out on PlayStation 5 but had better textures, better resolution, and better frame rate, I think that would be good overall, because there would be more games to pick up, and then there would be games to play on the handheld where you're not feeling like you have to split your time and money between a handheld game or a main level console game. But yeah, 300 bucks, if this thing is that price, I think it's really gonna be a tough sell for people. 200 bucks is where I think it's gonna be interesting to people, but I don't know, man. Like, you need to make this thing so cheap that you literally feel dumb not to buy it, because the whole point of this device is to buy games on your PlayStation 5 to then stream to this thing. It's not like you're streaming PS Plus games to it or anything. So Sony really should just take a huge loss on it, sell it for like 150 bucks, get it into people's hands, and then hope that they recoup that loss on people buying games. One PS5 accessory that I'm also not totally sure how many people are going to be lining up down the block for is this new special edition set of plates for the PlayStation 5 that are themed around LeBron James. So this was announced a while ago without a release date. They basically just said this summer. There was no price alongside it, but basically what it is a new DualSense controller with a bunch of doodles on it and a LeBron phrase, and then you can also get matching plates for your console. And the phrase you're gonna see all over it is "nothing is given, everything is earned." And look, I think it's cool. I think it's nice to have someone who really likes PlayStation like LeBron be able to make, you know, his custom faceplates and stuff like that. It's just kind of frustrating with the timing end of things when people really want special edition plates for their PlayStation 5 and we're not getting them here. Like over in America, we're getting the LeBron James edition, which, you know, he's a cool guy and everything. I heard he's rebooting Friday the 13th. I can't wait to see that. But over in Japan, they're getting Final Fantasy 16 plates and a Final Fantasy 16 controller to go along with it, and we're just getting the controller. So like, yeah, I don't really understand the strategy here. All I can really think about is like Sony entered this agreement a long time ago. They weren't planning on really doing it, but then LeBron might have been insistent about it or something like that, and they were like, screw it, let's put these plates out before we release the new PS5 that's going to have a new set of plates, and that's the point where we'll start doing crazy special edition plates to go along with that. But I don't know, 65 bucks for these things is kind of like a crazy price, right? Like, it's just plastic. I don't really understand why the margin is so high when I'm assuming these things probably cost $3 to $4 to make. And even if you add on this custom design, which has a bunch of different colors and designs all over it, it does actually fill up a lot of the plate as well. I can't imagine these things costing more than $10 to make. So 65 bucks just seems like an absolutely insane markup for something that's just like an accessory that you're throwing on the side of your PS5. The white plates are fine. I don't really like white electronics. That's one of my biggest knocks against the ROG Ally. It's that like it's gonna get dirty after a while if you put your hands on it. And as we've seen with the white plates that come on the PS5, they collect dust like crazy. And there's tons of pictures online of people's outside of their PlayStation 5 collecting a bunch of dust and dirt and stuff like that. I will say, since I've been in Michigan, my PS5 has not gotten dirty at all, and neither has my car. So that smog in LA was really causing these problems, I think. But still, it's not a great look to have a dirty ass PS5 sitting there underneath your TV. And it's not like you can actually go and put it in your entertainment center, because if you enclose it in a tight space, hot air is going to come out. It's going to suck that hot air back in. And as we've been seeing with Final Fantasy 16, your console might overheat after a little while. So there's not really a good solution there other than to buy new plates. And then you go to buy these new plates and they're like $65 or $70, which is the price of a DualSense controller or a brand new game. So yeah, the pricing on these things is completely out of whack, but the silver lining, I guess, is that when this new PS5 comes out, they're probably going to fire sale the old plates because they won't work on the new detachable disk drive PS5. So if you want to keep your original PS5, you don't feel like upgrading to the Slim, I would just wait until that new Slim is announced and they start fire sailing all these different colors of plates. Or if you are getting the Slim, your silver lining is that they're probably going to start releasing special edition plates to go along with that console. So it's really like a win-win either way. But still, I don't really know about this LeBron edition plates. Like, I want to be excited. I'm a PlayStation fanboy. It just doesn't really seem like the priorities are straight over at Sony when it comes to making special edition consoles. And this just seems like something Xbox would give away on Twitter. I'm just gonna say it. Next up here, let's talk about another interesting piece of news that came out of this FTC versus Xbox situation. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, Jim Ryan actually had to come testify at this event. I'm calling it an event, like it's a summer showcase. It's not an event, it's like a lawsuit or something like that. I don't really know what it is, but yeah, he had to come testify at it and basically answer a bunch of questions. And one that really stood out to me that I actually ended up seeing reported on Insider Gaming is that Jim Ryan said, and I quote, "I talked to all publishers and they unanimously don't like Game Pass because it's value destructive." And look, this is not the Dump on Xbox channel. Just because I like PlayStation doesn't mean I hate Xbox. I have a Series S that my fiance plays Hogwarts Legacy on, and I also have a Series X, right? Like, I like Xbox, but when it comes to Game Pass, this is what I have been saying on our 2 host videos we were doing back when I was in LA with Ray for like years now at this point. I can't believe it's been that long. The problem with Game Pass is that when you take games and give them away technically for free, you need to recoup the amount of money that you spent on that game. But all we're hearing about all the time lately is that games are so expensive, they're getting crazy to make, the pricing on them is out of control, the budgets just aren't recoverable, the teams working on them need to work long hours. You know, like we're hearing about crunch all the time, and there's just a whole problem on the actual making games side of the fence that we're hearing about constantly. So then when you're juxtaposing that against a $15 a month subscription price, you need to have an insane amount of people subscribe to that service to actually recoup the development costs of games like Deathloop, Starfield, and Halo Infinite, and Forza Horizon 5, and Fable, and all these other games that Xbox has been announcing. And then while Microsoft is taking all this time, like 3, 4, 5 years, making all these games, they're also making deals with other studios who are releasing third-party games to put on the service and keep those new titles coming, like Outriders is an example I can think of. It's a little old, but like, you know what I mean. That's a AAA game that launched on Game Pass, or Back 4 Blood, that's more recent. That came out in Game Pass, and that really makes sense for multiplayer games. I'm not really criticizing that, but then those games, there's really no reason to go and buy them, right? Like with Outriders, if you have the entire game on Game Pass, it's a game that was actually marketed as, this is not a live service. This is a looter shooter where it has a defined beginning, middle, end. We're gonna do a DLC content drop that kind of gives you a little bit more of an end game, but then after that, we're gonna move on and work on the sequel, or something like Remnant from the Ashes. It's a very similar setup to something like Outriders. So when you have something like that and you can just download it on Game Pass, no one's ever gonna say, oh man, I really wanna go out and buy this game that I already beat and did all the content in, right? Like, even if it's eventually taken off Game Pass, I don't think anyone's gonna go to GameStop or Best Buy or Amazon and pick up a brand new copy of Outriders that's almost assuredly going to be full price or close to it. And then the top layer, the simplest way to explain this is that if Microsoft is giving away Starfield, one of the biggest looking games of all time, like in terms of scale and scope, for free with that monthly subscription, it's going to make Sony look bad for charging $70 eventually for some of their bigger games. And the last news story I have for you guys today is that we are officially at the end of June, which means the PS Plus games for July, at least the essential ones, have been revealed, and they are actually pretty good this month. Well, 2 out of 3 of them I think are awesome. So the one I just really don't know about is Endling Extinction Forever. If you know what this game is, let me know in the comments below if it's worth playing. But on top of that, we're getting Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War on PS5. It's a full-on PS5 release, and that alone, I think the campaign is totally worth playing. It's a really cool setting for sure that's like built around espionage and doing Black Ops type stuff. I thought it was a really cool game. Not necessarily the best Call of Duty campaign, but just the theme and the setting and some of the levels. Like, you infiltrate a training ground for, I think, like KGB soldiers, where it's like set up like an American downtown 50s era type deal, and it looks awesome to be fighting your way through that. Also, this is one of the best showcases of the DualSense controller, so if you want to feel the adaptive triggers when you're shooting a rocket launcher or something like that, I think this game is totally worth checking out. And then the big one that I think everyone should at least take a weekend to try out is Alan Wake Remastered. We've got Alan Wake 2 coming out at the end of the year. I've been talking about a ton here on the channel how excited I am for that. If you play this game, you will understand why I'm so excited for Alan Alan Wake 2. Now, I played the remastered version last summer and it looks a little better. It's not really all that big of an improvement over the original game. I wish they went back and kind of made the combat just a little better, but the actual mechanics are really cool. Like, you have to burn shadows off of enemies before you can actually kill them. So your crosshair is a flashlight, which is always something I love. Like in the original Resident Evil 4, you just had a laser sight on every gun. I love stuff like that, and this is a cool evolution of that. So if you've never played Alan Wake, it's a great summer game, weirdly enough, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. It's just wild to see this Xbox 360 exclusive game now being released on PlayStation Plus for free. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Shape on.